All right, we're live. Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to the Sofa Real Talk, and we have another lovely episode tonight. Disclaimer first. As of right now, I don't have anybody on the show that's actually a counselor or what's the other word? A coach. I'm getting there. I ain't got there yet. I'm gonna be I'm getting those papers soon enough. But yeah, just want to let you know that I'm not a professional. Just going through a lot of stuff in life to where I've noticed that it is a bad scene of just unhealthy relationships. Looking at from my parents to other kin folks to just best friends and just random people on the streets and just talking to them. So this is what this platform is for. And so our episode is Let's Talk About Sex, baby. um, but we're not talking about the freakiness of sex. We're wanting to jump in and allow Miss Evelyn to introduce herself. You can go right ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, as always, to be welcome to this platform. As many of you have seen already, I am Evelyn Whitney, author of the book Truth Speak: Some Real Reasons That Men and Women Don't Communicate. Many people believe that the differences in the way that men and women communicate make it difficult for them to interact. But those things have easier resolutions than most people give them credit for. And this book walks people through how to figure out what those stumbling blocks really are and dissolve them to work toward their most optimal communicative exchanges.
Awesome. And I myself, I am reading that book amongst a lot of other books that I've read dealing with relationships. And I explained to her that I knew once I got the book in my hand and start reading that it was meant for me to find her and find this book because you when you think you got something under control and then something comes into your hands and you find out that no, not really. And communication for me has always been horrible. I just don't like English. I think that's really one of the reasons why my communication is off. Having to push that aside, uh, that's lovely, lovely to talk about this show. Um, Now, before I even jump into what I was about to say, Miss Evelyn, because I noticed and I purposely made this episode, and I was surprised that you took this weekend to say, "Hey, I need to get on," because you speak on a lot how sex is portrayed towards women. And actually, before we even start the show, we were talking about this and the offset on how sex is, and I've seen it myself, but and sex is used to victimize women in so many horrible ways versus it being used to victimize men. Not saying there have never been men out there that has been, victimized by sex, and I truly have been, unfortunately. But you see it a lot when it comes to women.
Mhm.
So I just talking to you and having you on a couple of times, and just me seeing it on like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and how the female body is um like taking that phrase trophy, and I found myself saying, in my head and maybe even out loud that my lady is a trophy towards me, but she actually is not an object. And I threw that term out a couple of weeks ago, and thinking as in outside of just explaining to someone that, hey, they feel as though maybe they have a woman as a trophy or a trophy wife. And if any men look at their women as so, you're really it's not a respectful thing in a sense because you're looking at them as an object.
That is true. That is true. And you had mentioned that I had taken the weekend to consider my participation in the show or not. I was actually working on a podcast that I wasn't
Oh,
sure I'd be available for the date.
gotcha.
But
Hey,
once that was confirmed that we were not going to be convening for anything on this evening, I asked you if it was still time for me to confirm my appearance. Accepted a late confirmation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Um, but to your point about the way that sex is used as a weapon towards women, and sex is, um, and the whole trophy wife objectification thing, I, speaking as a woman, have to be careful about certain things that I say about it
mhm,
because there are trigger words. That's what I call them. There are trigger
okay.
words that when a person says those words, people don't recognize that they stop listening. When a
Hmm.
woman starts talking about how unfair relationship stereotypes and double standards are, people stop listening When black people start talking about how racism is impacting their lives, people stop listening.
I can
And
see that.
I have to be careful not to use certain words so that I don't cut off people's attention span subconsciously. Objectification is one of those words. When the
Okay.
society talks about how women have been objectified, made to be objects rather than human beings, when women start talking about how unfair that is, people stop listening. So when you parallel being a trophy wife to being an object, part of the first thing that I recognize in the comparison is you're right, it is an object. However, expanding the concept just a little bit, most things that apply to women start out positive but become negative. A trophy wife used to be not only this woman who was beautiful, but
Okay.
she was literally the prize. After he had worked and courted her and done all the things that he was supposed to do in the gallantry of chivalry and all of those types of things, and he finally won her affections, she was essentially his trophy in that way. That's how the parallel was being made. At the same time, those kinds of standards for their behavior they don't match today's standards for behavior at all. So it started out being somewhat well intentioned and just has devolved as society's impositions have also devolved. Also consider the term being high maintenance. When a woman used to be said to be high maintenance, it meant that if a man approached her, he had to have his together. He had to
Okay.
know what he was bringing to the table for her, as that conversation has been recent. He had to know that when he was going to approach her, he had everything she was looking for. He was
Okay.
ready to be what she needed, and there would not be a toleration of any foolishness on her part. She
Hmm.
would not tolerate any foolishness. That meant that when he approached her, he had to come correct, as it were. Thus, she was high maintenance.
Okay.
What that has turned into is a denigration of her. Now all of a sudden she's consumed with all these things, and he doesn't have to make the effort because her examples and her expectations are so high and they're ridiculous and things of that sort. So we're looking at the fact that there's an attitude in society that nothing women do is correct. If it causes the man any type of effort beyond his slightest exercise, then she's wrong for it. If she's upset because he has said that they're in a relationship but he wants to sleep with other people, she should know better and she should appreciate having a good man as he is. But
Hmm.
he's the one who's actually doing wrong, you know. And one of the other examples I'll give, and then I'll stop.
No, no, no. You good? But go ahead.
I had this conversation in one of our broadcasts before about if a woman has to remind a man to do something 62 times, why is she called a nag, but he's not considered thoughtless and inconsiderate for ignoring what she's asked him to do all this time? That example presents the general sense of attitude toward the things that women do and women say that make her wrong. And she always gets the assumption of the worst, whereas he always gets the benefit of the doubt, even if he is wrong.
Hmm.
And that attitude, stretched out over sexual practices, has certainly infiltrated relationship dynamics between men and women.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and it also brings up the attention to just men in general. When I say men, I mean women and men nowadays more than anything. Where it, I'm glad you brought that up about the how something starts off um, innocent, positive, and then it turns to something negative throughout the years. And and definitely I get to the topic at hand after this. Um, I personally, my opinion, I think that comes from when you have a lot of people that either are not considered in that category of whatever that is at the time. Um, Especially men towards women, they have to make it bad in order for whomever is changing the narrative of that word or words in order for them to look good with something that they are not.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yes. That is exactly the premise. Yes.
Yeah. So I really we were just talking about cuss words the other day and how and explaining to the kids that to be honest, any word can be considered a cuss word if just depending on how it's being used.
Agreed.
The she she made a perfect example with, if I'm not mistaken, so don't quote me on this, that Jesus came in on a donkey
Hmm.
and ass in the Bible, right? So donkey is an ass.
Right.
But if we're talking about a donkey, we're talking about ass. But
Right.
we can't fit, and even if we don't call someone the A word, we can still call them a donkey and that still be considered an ass.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And
Those were veggie curse words. That's what they were called when I was little.
but that's neither here or there. The topic today, let's talk about sex. Um, I really wanted to bring the conversation up due to definitely because of who I am. I just can't see myself being sexually with someone and not having a relationship form of a covenant with that person. And like nothing's wrong with dating. If I'm just taking you out, we having a drink or whatnot, and it goes good. Maybe even people texting and talking on the phone, a few days later. But then I also take someone else out on a date. I feel that that's what it is. It's dating. As long as I'm not crossing that sexual plane, then one, I'm not attached to anyone. And so Brian said something in one of the episodes about how it really irks him when someone says that a marriage license is just a piece of paper.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now,
Mm.
so I begin with Mark 10:6-9. But at the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. So, and without knowing that scripture, I've always embodied that for some reason. Only thing that I can possibly go back to is maybe just the visions of my parents and seeing how that relationship, like in my younger years, was not a relationship, and my mom never really sat down and told me what a relationship was, or never really told me what she needed from my dad. It's just something I sensed,
Hmm.
something I read into her actions, what she said and what she didn't say. And I think all of that just was a part of my growth that allowed me at an early age, which was the funniest thing. I think I was like 13. A counselor was like, ma'am, yeah, unfortunately, something is going on with your son. And he had some personal issues. And but for some reason, um, he's a little overly mature for his age when it comes to relationships wise, because he's asking me out on a date. Yeah, I actually asked her out for dinner and whatnot, but I've always just been that person,
Okay.
and I think my first experience with sex was god awful. I remember it. It wasn't god awful because of who I did it with. It just wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and even then, I grew that attachment to that person at that time, and that emotional connection. We never once talked about having sex, nor was the discussion talked about after. It just continued. But my mind, my heart, and my spirit was, I'm connected to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is, let's take the paper off the table. Let's say the paper never existed.
Okay.
In order to form a legitimate under God, how do we go about do that?
Okay. This answer, as you include a covenant with God, that makes this answer scriptural.
Hmm.
And I have to go to the Bible to answer that question. I was going to talk about it just a little bit, and then I was a little, I was trying to figure out how I was going to tie it in, but this is a perfect segue. Right now, I'm going to share my screen very quickly if I can.
Yeah.
This is a Bible that's online. Everybody can see this. They can go to it right now, even. And where we're looking online is in Genesis chapter 15.
Okay.
God and Abraham are having a conversation where God is reminding Abram at that time, that he was going to have a promised child. He was going to have a seed that would make many nations. And Abraham said, okay, God, since there's recently been a servant born into my house, he's the one that will be my heir because I have none. And God said, that's not what I told you. I am telling you that the heir will be of your loin. And then Abram says, sure, okay. How will I know that this is the covenant? How will I know that this is what we're doing? And we go down to right here in verse 7. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of Chaldees, some people say, to give thee this land to inherit it. And then in verse 9, he tells him to get a series of animals, a heifer of 3 years old, a goat, a ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took these, divided them in the midst, which is to have cut them in half. And he put one half on this side and one half on the other side. He did it with all of these different animals. And when the sun went down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, no of a surety. And then we get down to verse 17. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp passed between those pieces. Okay? So we looked at God and Abram speaking about something that God promised Abram he would do. Abram said, sure, you're going to do it. I get it. But how will I know for sure? God said, get these animals and divide them in the midst from the front to the back, piece over here, and they're all in this line. Okay. Now the sun coming down, behold, a smoking, burning lamp that passed between those pieces. The presence of God manifest in this smoking lamp and passed between the flesh. In this instance, we're looking at a biblical representation of the passing between the flesh being representative of a covenant with
Hmm.
human and God. Now, of course, God and Abram aren't doing anything sexual. This is just the illustration of the fact that when Abram asked God, "How will I know?" God confirmed his promise with a covenant by passing through the flesh. That is where this imagery is the illustration of the covenant. So you
That's
ask, how do you know that you are entered in covenant with God? This is one of the ways that God has shown forth his covenant relationship. And
okay. Now, on top of that as well, the covenant with a woman, though, without the paper being a forefront,
mhm,
because it's man's law that we have to sign a paper in order to legitimately say we're married. So we take that paper off of the table. How is that covenant established under God
you're
with that
talking
woman?
you're talking about between a man and a woman, you're talking about the sexual connection. You're talking about the consummation of their relationship, which is one
Yes,
of the reasons that that isn't supposed to happen until they're actually married, because that is the sealing of that relationship between those two parties. The
exactly.
secular world has blown that to hell. But for your point, the consummation of their relationship is supposed to be the foundation, the securing of that covenant. It's supposed to be, but a lot of people
Okay.
don't treat it that way.
Yes. So, which hence me going into the next part of, uh, matter of fact, one of the little groups that we're in, I posted several times about how sex is basically being misused, and it's definitely a lot of men. Their response is, you know, is the reproduction. They like they throw that, don't we supposed to be fruitful? And I've also learned that being fruitful don't automatically just single out just being sexually active and having a whole bunch of kids. Being fruitful also considers um, the time you put in at work and you yield promising results from what you do. And because I was one of those crazy fools that thought being fruitful meant going out and have a whole bunch of kids when I was young. So I can avouch and say I was one of those people. But um, I, like you stated, that, and matter of fact, me and Lisa was talking about it last night, and we're going to make an episode out of what is the meaning for a woman to have an orgasm, which for a man, even though, and I just found this out about anatomy, that a man having an orgasm doesn't, he he has an orgasm and he produces sperm.
Uh huh.
Those are two different moments happening
Mm-hmm.
at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That
And
is.
so, because I'm like, so are you trying to tell me that men are really just only supposed to have sex, if we're planning on having kids?
Oh my goodness.
And then so I'm like, if that's the case, then why do women have orgasms?
All
We
right.
researched.
All right. Here we go. Okay, we're jumping right in this here.
Yes.
The idea that society at large doesn't necessarily embrace the purpose of a woman's orgasm talks about how little they consider her sexual satisfaction. That is horrible, really. I mean, sex is a very natural desire for
Hmm.
men and for women,
Hmm.
but most people don't really care about how natural it is in a woman. They're only focused on the man's sexual desire, and that is prioritized above anything that a woman could need or that she could even want.
I can see that.
The purpose of a woman's orgasm, surprisingly, is the same purpose of a man's orgasm, to experience the pleasure involved. There are
Yeah.
some churches that teach what you suggested, that the only reason for sex is procreation. Biologically, we know that that is not true because there are certain times within a woman's menstrual cycle that she cannot conceive.
Yes.
So it's impossible that the only reason for sexual intercourse could be reproduction. But
Hmm.
this is one of those things that many people don't really talk about because it would have to involve consideration of the woman as a being who enjoys sex. Society doesn't put that out there. Society just says, like, all you're supposed to do is be beautiful and ready for the man. That's it. The other
Wait.
side of, do you have,
You know,
okay,
you had said something, and I had come across a scripture, and I did put it in the talk about, but it pretty much kind of said what you said when crap, I can't remember it. I don't know which verse it was, but it was saying that, a man has to be there. In so many words, it has to be there for his woman versus a man. I mean, not versus, but also a woman ready for her man too. But
let me,
men, we take that man part out for being there and putting in that energy to the woman, to just highlighting, oh, the woman is just supposed to basically bow down, be legs wide open for the man at any given time.
yes.
So
And it's so funny that that's what you're saying because that's another point that I actually wanted to bring out. While we're talking about sex and covenants, we're obviously talking about marriage. There are people who
yes.
there are people who engage in this activity without the marital context. They can hear and listen to these points, and hopefully it'll open some further considerations. But for the purpose of this discussion, it is accepted that we're talking about a marital situation.
Yes.
Okay, so if you ask a woman what are her wifely duties, she'll probably say taking care of the kids, keeping the house clean, cooking, and satisfying my husband's desire. That's what she'll say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ask a man what are his husbandly duties. He'll say working,
Nothing.
providing for the house, making sure that they have groceries and food and all of those
Yep.
things and everything that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And then he stops.
Stops. Yep. Is nothing included by doing anything for his woman. Yep.
Exactly. And that astounds me. It just it that's awful. And I'm often at a loss for words how ridiculous that is.
Mm.
When you think about the anatomy of the woman and the production of stimuli for these orgasms, she has an organ that only has one function:
Mm.
to receive sexual stimulation.
Mm-hmm.
If God intended for the woman to be trod upon the way that she is, why would the only organ whose full purpose is sexual desire and sexual satisfaction had been given to the woman? There are people who do not understand that premise, like at all. And the idea that a man has no, in general, men have no concept of their responsibility to
Mm.
sexually satisfy their wives the way that his satisfaction is demanded of her.
Wait. So even with that being said, so let me throw something in there that, to a unfortunate mishap of that may not be true. They do, to a certain degree, men do know. They just use it
Okay, well,
for their own gain.
know what? What are
Because
you saying?
the reason why I say that is, if you talk, especially nowadays, if you talk to a lot of men, especially those that feel the need to have a notch on their belt, and something I talk to my sons about. Um, okay, I'm not saying that. you shouldn't have sex unless you know you're actually committed to that person. Um, and my thing is, if you know you just dating, go date. But if you feel the need to go ahead and do it, my God, don't go in and how some men like, I gotta go in hard. You gotta show I'm the stuff in the bed. I gotta pull out all the punches just to know that you ain't gonna go back and talk to this person. So they go in with the mindset of I gotta make her feel good because what that does for me is it scratches my ego.
Okay, that's a separate point than what I'm talking about. But
Oh,
it is a point well received. Yes. There are men who take her satisfaction into consideration, but the barrier, the boundary is what you said exactly. They're not looking at her satisfaction for the fact of her being satisfied. They're looking
yes,
at what that satisfaction means to
does for
his
them.
purpose. Exactly.
Yes.
That's not how.
No, no, no. I know that was contradictory to what you were saying. Yeah, I definitely do that. I just had to throw that out that because again, they do know,
We're saying
but
the same thing.
yeah, yeah, and it's sad that like look at trafficking. I look at trafficking the same way that you have the nerve to go pull a young child from off the street, wipe at home, and not saying that, and the things that you do to this individual, this woman mainly. I'm not saying that little boys are not trafficking, and heck, sometimes even older women are being trafficked. But the fact that the things that you do to this person, you dare not do it to the so-called wife that you got at home. That's the thing that I really have never been able to understand.
Okay, if I can address that in two sections.
Uh-huh.
On the one side, trafficking humans is as lucrative, if not more so, than trafficking drugs. That's
Yeah.
why both of them are called trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
People who engage in those behaviors have money as an objective. And if they can traffic money or if they can traffic people, the money is what they're looking for. And they don't necessarily care how the interactions go down between the trafficking victim and the client who's paying them to have this experience. That is borderline sociopathic, really, but that's just my own take on that.
It
The,
is.
the second part of it is, which is where I thought you were going at first. I thought you were going to say that there are men who have wives at home and then they not only traffic the women, but they actually engage in the clientele. They actually have intercourse with these trafficking victims, and they do to those trafficking victims what they won't do to their wives. That
No, that's
person,
what I meant. That's exactly what I meant.
okay, that
Yeah.
person, that person recognizes some level of cruelty in what they're doing. And that level of cruelty is enough in their person to say, I don't want to hurt my spouse like this, but I still need to get this out.
Hmm.
Addictions function that way. And that person might need some sex addiction counseling if that's the way that they're engaging in this activity versus what they will choose not to do to a person that they consider themselves loving.
And I bring that up only to say maybe not to the sex trafficking level, but I look at a lot of men that go jumping around and they dare not want someone to mistreat their sister or let alone their mother like that, but they jumping around ship doing something that they don't want something done to their own child, or if they do have a wife at home, or let's sit up here and say a partner for 15, 16 years. And again, that's why I say taking the paper off of the table. Let's sit up here and say the ring, and the paper didn't exist at all. So in order to sit up here and say that you were married to that person, one, you definitely have to go and and you still have to have some wordage being played between the two. You can't just assume that once I lay down and have sex with this person, just automatically this is going to be a covenant upon God. First, first most, and I think that's something that we also um mess up on too. A lot of us are out getting married and thinking that for those that believe in God, I'm saying to those people, and we feel that this marriage is under God, and the way that we went to go by getting married wasn't godly whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've
And
seen it happen.
so I think because I am that person, for me, not not throwing, because I'm going to have to sign a paper again myself, and not saying that I'm throwing in the fire and say it doesn't mean anything. That person, and me knowing that I have that legitimate godly covenant with that person, does mean more to me than this piece of paper, because at the end of the day, this paper can burn and be gone. I can't reprint or re-sign for my wife.
That is true. I understand exactly what you're saying, and I concur with everything that you just said about the substance of the relationship, apart from the paper that the relationship is supposed to be the confirmation of. There are people who don't recognize what you're saying.
Oh
They
yeah, I know.
they don't embrace the sincerity is not the word. They don't embrace the significance of the relationship with that person. And to your point about those men who kind of just sleep around and then don't want their sisters to be in anybody else's sleep around circle, it's the same thing. It's just like you said, it's not on that level of trafficking, but there's still some aspect of that person who that needs to be addressed. Part of them, part of their framework is also that society enables that for men when they don't for women. There are people who will say a woman who has slept with 21 men in a
Mm,
week, oh, if she has a sexual desire that active, then she must be traumatized. She must have been raped. She must have been abused when she was younger. But if a man sleeps with 21 women in that week, his homeboys are dapping him up, patting him on the back, trying to figure out how he can do it and keep their names all straight when they don't know each other.
yeah.
That misconception about the healthiness of a woman's sexual desire only being attached to her being abused somehow is wrong, basically, and it's very damaging because that's a psychology. That isn't just about male and female. That's a psychology. And when people assume that a woman who expresses a healthy desire has had to have been abused, but they don't assume that about men, they are they are building their premises more on societal imposition than they are what is actually biologically happening, what is actually biologically true for some people, because it could be true that some men who have been abused then become promiscuous, the way that it's always assumed of women.
Yeah.
And what makes it true for one person doesn't mean it's true for everyone. And that's one of the problems with the way that society looks at issues like this. If it's right for a man to sleep around, why is it wrong for a woman? Because society is imposing these boundaries upon what she cannot do versus what he can do. And even
Yeah.
even if he is traumatized in some way and his trauma is manifest in this promiscuity, nobody's going to look at him and think that. They're just going to look at the woman who is promiscuous and say that she's the one who's been traumatized, and her healthy sexual expression is a result of that trauma, and that is not correct.
I can add to that as well because I started my sex activities at 13. I was never sexually fondled. Didn't get raped until I was 16, and I was extremely sexually active at a 13 at for a 13-year-old. And to this day, again, I found myself in a room more or less like a peer pressure type thing. And when it happened, it just I for some reason I could never go back in hiding or whatnot. It was just boom, door wide open, and just kept running with it. Unfortunately, but so that's my thing. That, and I also have made this statement on Facebook. What if there was a law where if you had sex, you had to be with that person for 5 years, and if you chose to leave that person, then you would go to jail for X amount of years. And it was a lot of folks that responded to it about, you know, go to jail. And I'm like, again, so what's the purpose? And only thing that I can get out of it is entertainment value of it, and especially when it comes to men, which
Mm-hmm.
it has been a thing for men for so long that, and you stated this before, now women are hip to the game as heck. I can do it. Not only do I want to beat him as being a CEO and show him that I can do some stuff, I'm finna show him that I can beat him at his own game, sex. And it's like, it's only be, and I know it's because of who I am and what I embody. It's just sad to see that a lot of reasons for relationships to be so at dismay right now is one, we seriously don't teach our kids what sex means.
Right.
It's not a bad thing. We constantly, closing our kids' eyes and stuff. It's something I wanted to play. I saw something on YouTube about some nudists, but I didn't have a chance to download it and play it. But a child is born not knowing half of the stuff that we feel that we should block them from. And my thing is, if taught in a respectful way, meaning mainly like sex and stuff, when back in our days when they told us that, oh, you can't have sex before marriage, you go to hell. That was it. You're too young to have sex. There really wasn't no description or no explanation why we finna tell you that you can't have sex. It's just you better not do it. It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. So then once you get older, even if you wait until you're 18 and you have sex, still in that mind, that concept is, oh Lord, I done a bad thing. Because it's what I've been taught, sex is bad. And I just feel is that if we, and not just the birds and the bees, just saying, oh, he got a pee pee and she got a pootie pie and all that. No, like literally sitting down. And I guess that's why I was saying, and I'm finna cut it off right there. Let Brian say something. And the episode where we talked about generational habits, where I wish I did see my mom and my dad. Like, I didn't have to hear no description of them doing it, but other than me being born, I did not know, or they didn't show any form of romance. So for me to be introduced to sex at 13, and then how I thought, that was like at 13, I'm talking about getting married. I'm going to tell my mom I need to buy a ring.
Mm,
And like, because I done this thing that I wasn't supposed to do until I got married. And so my thing is to my son, unless marriage, son, is when you finally find that one person that you want to try and live your forever with, meaning that whoever dies first, or heck, you guys might die together. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But my thing is, as of right now, one, You're staying with your mom. You can't take care of nobody. You ain't got no job, let alone the person that you're trying to be with. Ain't got her own house. So you can't sit. There's no need for you to introduce sex in your life at the moment because that's a sacred thing that you should have with that person that you seriously want to be involved with. It's not a game, and we've made sex into such a game.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so first of all, my apologies. I honestly thought that the show started at 9. So
Yeah,
putting down my
no, that's
daughter.
my fault.
I was putting down my daughter. So then I got this alert that said, "Oh, Sofa Talk is live." I'm like, "Oh, it can't be live." B Dawson ain't there. You know, B Dawson ain't
Oh
there.
my bad.
It ain't gonna be
I
live.
had
B Dawson ain't
I
there.
had I had changed it this season only because it gives us just a brief moment to go over and not being too late if we need to.
Got you.
And so my apologies, man.
It's all good. Well, I'm about to give you the Cliff Notes version, I guess, of what I feel. First of all, uh, my wife had this saying that she said that women use sex to get love, and men use love to get sex.
Yeah.
I wish that my mother would have had more candid conversations with me about sex when I was younger. To be honest with you, the fact that I don't have more children out of wedlock is a testament to God's grace because no one really had those conversations with me outside, my uncles and my older cousins. And some advice isn't the best advice, it's not. I think
Exactly. Yep.
yeah, sex has been weaponized, I think, by both sexes
Yep.
to in a really manipulative form that it wasn't created for.
Yes.
I think that we do need to, but I'm be honest with you, it might be unpopular. We need to start teaching our young boys to take care of their token the way we try to teach girls about the virtue.
Oh no, no, yes, we
You know,
should. We
I don't
are
know. I don't know if y'all have
Yeah.
already covered that or not. I'm late to the game. My bad. But
no, but
no,
we have said it before in other episodes that
yeah.
you weren't in
So,
that
right, because men have been socialized to, basically go out here and sow your oats with as many women as you can till you find the right one. I'm be honest with you, it's not just men who teach young boys this. Some women,
mhm,
including mothers,
mhm.
have taught their boys the same thing. Because how many times have you heard, "Oh, we hear a little boy, oh, he's gonna be a heartbreaker." He.
Yep, yep.
Oh, you're gonna have to fight him off with a stick. He.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
keep
You know
again.
what, Brian, not to cut you off, but also they have that. I met a couple of parents where that their sons were dating my daughters, where I'm contacting them about, hey, there's a situation going on. Oh, well, you need to teach your daughter how to keep their legs closed.
Right. And everything. And we put too much responsibility on women to protect their virtue, and yet we haven't taught our young boys to protect
Yep.
their token. Because whether we want to admit it or not, sex really is a soul tie. It
Yeah, it
really
is.
is. And what you feel to realize is if you got so many of these different soul ties and so many different people, it's going to be hard for you to truly settle and hone in on and be satisfied with one mate in a monogamous relationship and things like that. But to my earlier point, I remember when I was a young boy and I really, really digged this girl I was dating in high school. I really digged her, and she was the only one. And my mother was like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't get so serious. You should date around." And I'm just like, "But I like her, right? So why can't I just date her?" But my mother, who was a single mother, didn't necessarily like the idea of me being too serious with one girl. And
Yeah.
whether we know it or not, you know, that kind of sort of it kind of unknowingly kind of teaches boys to date around, and then the way we're socialized with sex, that's also telling us, okay, because if you're not having this conversation about you can date around, but you don't have to sleep with anybody to still be a man. Then to a man is saying, hey, go out there, see if you can bed as many women as you like, and and in the process, we're giving our souls to these different women. Makes it hard for us when we want to really truly commit to one. It makes it kind of challenging and difficult. Not that it can't be done, but I think it makes it more challenging than it has to be. But all in all, sex has been weaponized on both sides by men and women to manipulate the other side into some sort of submission. You know, because the truth of the matter is that it is a very special, intimate act, and you should reserve those acts truly for someone who's really special. But in the event that things don't work out, one of the things I want us to do is to teach people, let's be responsible, okay? Let's use protection, because what's happening is collateral damage are these children that's coming out into the world. And I'll just go ahead and say and just put it out there. You know, I'm my mom's only child, but on my father's side, I'm the youngest of five children. And because we were so spread out, honestly, we don't have the best relationship. I lost my brother last month, and my lamentation wasn't the fact that he's gone. It was like, dang, I didn't get a chance to know my brother when he was here. I mean, we had conversations and we were in touch for a few years, but he had some different issues, whatever. But we're not close, and that is a function of the fact that too many seeds were being laid irresponsibly in too many places, and we have to be responsible. If we can't, I'm not unrealistic to think that people are only going to have sex with one person in life. I mean, clearly I didn't. My oldest son was born before I got married. So I'm saying that, but kids are the collateral damage of our irresponsible ways when it comes to how we go about with sex. And I definitely agree with you, Larry. We got to start talking to these kids young. I think it is healthy to let kids, maybe around 10 or 9, don't cover their eyes and see what questions they have for you. Because if sex is such as, bad taboo subject and they're curious, if you don't open the door for them to talk to you about it, then where are they going to go?
Outside.
You're going to have that conversation. You rather it be you.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
I definitely had those conversations walking to school, and all the dudes talking about, whacking their chicken and stuff. And I don't know what whacking the chicken is. I'm just agreeing with them and stuff. And again, my question to my dad is, hey, my pee keep being hard, and he's like, oh, you'll grow out of it, and I ain't grew out of it since. So, but Miss Jalissa says that in her community, sex was just not talked about, except we better not do it. And she also stated that that's right, teach them young, date, not sex her. And with that, going back to me and Lisa talking last night about the woman's orgasm, and which was so funny, was that society has made sex so important that you have to almost like a test driving a car, and folks are so insecure about sex that I can't see this person, I can't date this person, I can't get to know this person for who they are without going and having sex at the very beginning. Because even if I find out what this person is and I find out that I can have a wonderful time without being sexually active with the person, I cannot be with this person and not have great sex.
Can I interject for a second? I'm sorry,
Yes.
Miss Evelyn, but since I was late, I gotta catch up. And the truth of the matter is, let me be honest with you, because this whole test driving the car before or whatever, but if you've never driven a car before, then how would you know what to look for when you test drive it? And the reason, and what I'm saying that is this: a lot of hangups that people have about sex is that honestly they're too busy comparing their current lover to a former lover, and that
Right.
is
What
not
now?
and that is not healthy. But if neither one of you had ever had sex before, when you get in there, guess what? You don't have anything to compare it to. So you're both going in here discovering the beauty of sex with each other together. You have no one to compare it to, so therefore there's no outside inference to come in and distort how you guys feel about how you are doing in sex.
I got a better one for you. Hold on. Or when you talk about comparing it to the previous relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and just to throw it out there, not to be all nasty and whatnot. So you have a relationship that you've been in, and it might have been even the first sexual partner, especially when it comes to a female.
Mm-hmm.
So she has a person that she's dated for a couple of years, and that person was a little rough, and so that's what she's used to. Then she gets with someone that actually adores her, knows her worth, and wants to treat her respectfully. Now she can't accept this person to a certain degree. Some women can't accept, and then some women are open to. Oh, okay, dang, it was. Oh, this how it was supposed to be. I'm just used to just somebody running me down, basically. And I've come across that before, where she gets this gentle person that, oh no, he ain't doing it right, because I need someone to be rough with me because that's what I am used to. So basically, due to the fact that we don't know how to really have, a lot of people don't know how to have sex, and that sex is so much of a game and a notch doer, that people can't have that communication to where after sex, hey, did you enjoy it? What could I have done better? Or even in the middle of sex, where if a woman don't know herself and know what's going to make her enjoy sex, um, she can't communicate that to a man.
And
That
I'll go
is,
and I'll go a step further. I'm sorry, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna let you go. Uh,
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying. I had so much pent up,
Yes.
but, but and that's true. Um, but what I will say then is this too. Uh, Again, unrealistic expectations. We're different people, so we can't assume. Guy, you can't assume that the next woman that you're sexually involved with is going to like it the same way the previous woman did. And to my women, he doesn't know you. He has to learn your body. So my thing is, if there's something he's doing that you don't like, tell him so
mm-hmm.
then he can get it right. Okay. Um, oh shit. You know what I'm saying? So tell him so he can get it right. Like you can't assume that he knows how to please you. He hasn't been. And
Well,
truth of
a
the
lot
matter
of men
is,
do go in thinking that they do, though.
yeah, but my thing is that's an unrealistic expectation. First of all, guys have to get out their ego and be willing to ask the question, hey, how was it?
Mm-hmm.
Did you like this? Did you like that? And like you said, sometimes during. Women
Mm-hmm.
also need to be brave enough to boldly say, hey, you know what? I don't like that. I don't,
Yes.
and tell them during, like, at the end of the day, great sex is really more about communication and intimacy outside the bedroom than it is about what happens inside. Because a
Yes.
lot of times, if you really adapt, if you have made that connection with someone on an intimate level, on a non-sexual intimate level, before you get there, then all sex does is enhance that connection. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. And I was
Absolutely.
gonna get to that. Yes.
And the funny thing that you said, all of us were about to get to that very point, because that was one of the things that I wanted to say. One of the reasons that people have such failing relationships is that, oh, for lack of a better word, they quite literally put the cart before the horse.
Yes.
Mm,
They're engaging in sex before they learn how to talk to each other about it. And when there's no connection between those two people, even if they're engaging in sex prematurely, They don't have what they need to build anything with each other, to even have a simple conversation. And another thing I was thinking about was the idea when you said, Brian, when you said that women need to be brave enough to say what satisfies her and what doesn't. One of the things that we were talking about earlier in the evening was the idea that women are taught that virginal and pure is how you're supposed to be, and docile and subservient, while men run the streets naked, pretty much doing everything they want to do. And then they have these mixed match expectations when they come together about what the priority of a relationship should be. But if there are some women who believe, because of these stereotypical societal impositions, that if she voices her concern, if she voices what will make her happy and what won't, the man will recoil and say, "You're a whore. You're too sexually active. You know too much about sex, and you shouldn't know that. You should learn everything about sex that you know from me."
Right.
And if her and that's one of the reasons that she probably won't say anything, because she doesn't want to be seen that way. She doesn't want to appear to him as having something wrong with her at the level that she can express a healthy sexual desire. She needs to stop that. I fully agree with you. And while we're on this, I'm going to say one more thing. Ladies, stop faking orgasms. Don't do
Oh
that.
man, we talked about that too.
Man, yeah.
Stop faking orgasms.
Yeah.
Sometimes men come into a relationship, like he was saying, and they think that they know what satisfies her. And then when she screams like a banshee and he's not doing anything, she goes off and laughs to her friends about how inept he is. He's believing that all of the dysfunction that he learned must have been right.
Right.
Because
There
her
you go. Yeah.
shows him the same brokenness that he's already seen.
Yeah.
So then when she does finally say something, okay, wait a minute, we've been in this sexual relationship for like 8 months, and all those times that I was faking. And then he's like, "No, you're saying that because you're just mad at me right now."
Right, because now he's gonna dismiss what she's saying.
Exactly.
I had someone tell me that, and that was so funny. They was like, the many years that we were together, you never made me have an orgasm, and it didn't hurt my feelings, because it was like, I kind of felt that because the connection wasn't there anyways. It was a sense of me just trying to get a squirrel trying to get a nut, basically. And so, but then she tells me that this other person made me do this and made me do that. Good for you. Because I obviously, my thing was, I don't think me personally, I don't think that person knew themselves enough to tell me, hey, what we're doing. Well, you know what? Let me take that back. I think that person did. It was just, I shouldn't have been in that situation anyway. And I was trying to make the situation work, and it wasn't supposed to be working.
But the point that the point you really just proved the point of that y'all didn't have a connection, because if you did, the respect would have been there. Like, why?
Yeah, I say, hey, you're not making me.
Why would she tell you what another guy was able to do for her that you couldn't? Like, where would that conversation come up at? And I think that's so that lack of respect shows your lack of y'all lack of connection. Because no matter how mad you are at somebody, no matter how mad I've been at any woman I dated before I married my wife, I would have never tried to humiliate them like that. That's just
On one point, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Or do you?
I was just going to say, I think the conversation came up due to we were considering ourselves friends at the time, but
a friend wouldn't tell you that. A friend wouldn't tell you that. They would never say that to you. If she really wanted to be your friend, she would have never said anything like that. Because one thing about friendship is knowing how to tell the truth in love, but friendship is also knowing when to show restraint. Everything doesn't have to be said.
Yeah.
I agree with that 99.5%.
Okay.
The part where I have the little bit of question is, no, I won't say it that way. This is the better way to couch what I'm thinking. There are men who will ask a woman, "Aren't I the best that you had?"
Mm.
If
Nah.
he says no, he won't leave it alone. He's going to ask her 58 million times
That's true.
until she finally says, "Okay, fine, yeah, you were the best." And
You know what?
when
That's
he
true.
knows she's lying because he's asked her 52 million times and she's just ready for the conversation to be over.
Mhm.
That is, that shows, I'm going to say this and people might not like it. That shows really an immaturity on his part.
I agree.
It is.
Because when he asked her honestly and she answered honestly, he wasn't
He can
satisfied.
take it.
Exactly. So
He
he
can take
kept asking her until he got what he wanted to hear in the first place. And when women are societally imposed upon to address a man's sexual desire before addressing her emotional needs at any level, his pressure on her to answer that caused her to yield and just say, "Okay, yeah, you're the best." Now, when she gets angry enough, is not the time to say, "I lied about that." Because just as we were talking about before, he's not going to believe it. He's going to say, "You're just mad right now, so you're telling me what you think will hurt my feelings."
Mm.
When we're talking about people who are friends, if we're talking about a friends with benefits situation, mind you, this takes extraordinarily mature people. If we're talking about a friends with benefits situation, I don't think there's anything wrong with them discussing what happened, but that doesn't sound like the narrative that's been pitched in this
I'm gonna
conversation.
I'm gonna tell you.
Right.
It was basically I'm weird. I'm weird. Okay. I've known this for years. Um, I'm I'm the unicorn in the male species
We like you're weird.
because I will act. Uh, so what position that you and him did back in the day or whatever? What did you like? I'm that person that stuff that doesn't bother me. But it was my ex-wife moving on with her now husband, and at the time that we considered ourselves kind of friends, and so
Okay, yeah, that's
we
not where I was going. That
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, 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 no. I get what you were saying, but no, no, it wasn't sexual benefits type thing. No, um, she's always confined him, and even when I found out that she was um, had a boyfriend when we were like separated and whatnot. Again, my thing is that, and I talk to people a lot about this. Definitely, before you cross that sexual line, regardless if that person is lying or not about the questions that you're asking, the answers that they're giving, drill, drill. You ask. I mean, like if a man sits and don't want to ask any personal questions that you're asking, all the way down to what side of the bed you sleep on, you just need to have that date, a great time at that date, and going on about your business.
Can,
Because, and I it's the same way when it comes to a man with a woman as well, because somebody who's talking about having sex with a woman having multiple partners, and then it's different with a man. I always look at it as in a woman that has one partner can still have sex with that one person 1,000 times versus having sex with 5 people. It's just like a used car. A used car with one owner that put 72 miles on it with a car that has 17 owners that put 72 miles on it. It's still the same thing.
I got you.
so I'm a unicorn in a sense of the male species. To be honest with you, I honestly didn't give a fuck. Like The only thing that mattered to me was what we had right here.
Exactly.
I wouldn't. I never would ask those questions. I
Oh,
never
yeah,
would
y'all
make
ask the
those
question all the time.
declarations. Like at the end of the day, this is how I feel, right? And this is how I dated. This is how I dated, and this is how I process. Like I'm focused on me and this
Hmm.
person. I could care less when I could care less how many of the suitors that she had. I could care less what she did with people before me. It's none of my business. You get what I'm saying?
Wait,
The only thing,
you know what? Let me stop you right there. The reason why I'm
uh,
stopping you right there because I hear that a lot. My thing about that is, and the reason why I and just me,
yeah.
why I welcome a person to tell me about their past, because not only does that give me insight on how to love them better, it also lets me know where they have been, meaning as in mentally as well, because we have a lot of people that sit and say, oh, well, my past ain't got nothing to do with them. But then 5 years later, you do something that triggers them that has something to
So
do with the past.
so let me interject. We're talking about two completely mutually exclusive things, right? Of course, when you're dating someone, the psychological, emotional, and spiritual things that go into dating someone, yes, those things should be talked about. I am specifically referring to just the sexual
No,
act,
I'm saying
or just the
sex.
pleasure.
Because
Like,
again,
so
it
I
goes
guess
to
so what I'm saying is, for me, it didn't matter what a woman did with another dude before she got with me. The only thing that mattered to me at that moment was what we had going on. So there was no, oh, who's easy, Nas, and that. Like, for me, it didn't matter. Like, I just cared about in that moment. You know what I'm saying? Like, in that moment, what me and her were doing, and we could talk about what in that moment, then we could talk, especially if we had a connection, we could talk about, okay, hey, what did you like, what you didn't like. That's fine, but it ain't got nothing. But it ain't have nothing to do with what someone else did. I don't care. I want
But
to know what I
but
want to know what I can do to please you better. I don't give a fuck what he did over here. I'm talking about me. You know what I'm saying? And if that's what and if you bring up something that you like, you ain't gotta tell me who it was with. I don't care because I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that.
well, no, I didn't mean
You know
like
what I'm
going out and
saying?
just
Like,
saying, oh, Jeff
yeah.
Johnson the third. No, I
Right,
wasn't
yeah,
meaning
yeah.
like that.
I don't have to know. I don't have to know the intimate details of that,
No,
man.
no, 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 no,
You
no,
know,
no, no, no.
I guess for me, like certain conversations are pointless to me when it comes to just sex. Now, of course, when you're dating, of course, yeah, you need to kind of know the pathology. You need to know warning signs and red flags, all that. Yeah, you need to know that. I'm just talking about the actual act of sex.
Oh wait, no, it goes back to again what you were just stating about and what Miss Evelyn was saying, that the woman having the guts to say, "Hey, no, I don't like that."
Right.
Actually, I talked to someone that was doing something with someone, and the position that they were in,
Mm-hmm.
and explained, "Hey, no, no, don't do that." Okay,
Mm-hmm.
why not? For me, that's my angle, but it ain't my angle for me. Why
Yeah.
not? So that opens the door. Well, that did open the door for her to say, this is the reason why, because I had a bad experience. Again, like I said, you ain't got to go down and say Benjamin second or third did this to me.
Yeah.
It's, but I did have this experience with this one boy where this happened and it just didn't work out for me. So those are conversations that I'm meaning, where I ask those type of questions if something doesn't feel right. Oh, okay, what happened right here? Or she comes and says, hey, I really just saying I didn't like that. Okay, wow, what happened? And that's why I said it helps me love that person, and I mean sexually better. So now it's like any other form of trigger. Now I know that because I may like that position or I may like that speed, but because of bad experience with another person, now that I know that, then I'm not going to dive in and it just just because it makes me feel good. I have to take her consideration. And that's
I
what I was meaning.
We'll take it back.
I agree with that point. And one thing I want to underscore from what you said is that if the person expresses a concern that they have, it's good to talk about the origin of that concern. Fair enough on that. However, I don't think it's right, or I don't think it's the best practice to believe that any concern expressed has its origin in a bad experience. Because suppose somebody, this is an extreme example, but I'm going to go here. Suppose someone says, we've been in a relationship for 13 months. We've
Mhm.
been having sex for 6 of those 13 months, and things are good, things are great, things are, satisfying. Nobody's faking, nobody's lying about it. One of the people says, "Are you into S&M?" We never really talked about it, but I'm kind of thinking that that's something that I would try. If that person says no, that doesn't have to be because they had been tied up, put in a trunk, beat, gagged, whatever. That could just be something that they're not into.
Oh
So,
yeah, no, no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
absolutely.
wasn't no. I wasn't saying that. I was just
Absolutely.
saying that's those I have.
Yeah.
I'm that man that don't mind if you have that conversation with me. Heck, you know what? I'm a far right left unicorn. I can have a conversation with my woman about her past relationship. Period.
all, all
Is
all I'm trying to get at is what you said. When you're having the conversation, one of the
mhm.
ways that you try to get to the origin of the discomfort is to ask what happened. There may not always be a what happened. They could
Oh
just
yeah,
say,
that's true.
that's not something I'm
Yeah,
into.
that could just not be
Oh
their
yeah.
thing, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that does open up that conversation though. And I was just stating that I was using that example as an example
Yes.
to, and you're right. It might not in any instance doesn't always mean that
They're you
there's something bad. And kind of
right.
go back to the very beginning when we was talking about how Trophy Wife has
A next,
been watered down basically. So we've gone over our little thing here, and we're gonna have some little closing. Yeah, that's, again, Brian, I do apologize for that, sir. I did not my mishap again, like last week, and try to throw you on this episode that you that you couldn't get on.
But moving forward, they all start at 8 now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So
Okay.
again, like right now, it allows me that window to just go over just a little bit, and
Mhm.
it doesn't hurt me medically with my body to where I'm
Gotcha.
up like yeah. So, um, but yeah. So closing, basically, for me, talking about sex is something that's very needed. So if you have some young kids, and I'm going to piggyback on something that Brian was saying about having kids out of wedlock. Definitely, all five of my kids are what? Nope. Let me take that back. Four. My last child, she had him after we got married. So does that count? He's not out. He was born after we got married, so he's not out of wedlock, right?
Right.
yes, technically, because
Okay, all right,
we're married.
okay, all right. So he's safe. The other four, just messed up, right? Um, we use our tools recklessly, and as an adults in this crazy world, we don't take in consideration that our kids are not and not saying that they don't want to be here, but it wasn't their act of being here. It's something that we did with their mom. I mean, I'm talking as myself. Um, and so I think we think selfishly when, as men, when we just going around. and knowing that we're having sex without protection, knowing that she may not be on birth control, knowing that she can get pregnant at any given time. And not only are you having sex with this person, you're having sex with that person, and then there's all your spermicide is up in the wind, and you got 17,000 kids, and the only thing that you can do is just still keep going. I just think that's inconsiderate, and that sex is not being used properly, and that we need to really start sitting down and not sex education. I mean, like real in-depth conversation with our kids, and also adding, yes, men and women. I've stated this before on one of these shows. We need to teach our boys, if they definitely are talking about being a husband. You just got some men like women just don't want to get married. Heck, maybe not even have kids. So in that instance, I think there still should be some point being taught in case you find yourself in that position. This this is what it means to be a husband to a woman. It's just
Well,
my
and I'll just add to it. You know how we've seen these alcohol commercials, and they're saying drink responsibly. I think we should do sex responsibly, because at the end of
yes.
the day, to the males out there, to the males who are doing their thing, I guess, living your best life. Live your best life responsibly. There's too many things out there to prevent transmission of STDs, and also to prevent children being born to a situation that now they're collateral damage because of what you and the woman or several women have going on. Sex responsibly. And everybody, there's a lot of people say, well, everybody's goal ain't marriage. Okay, fine. So if your goal is the marriage ish, okay, if that's not your goal, if your goal is not to be in a marriage ish
I don't
situation
think you should
with
be
a
having
young
sex.
lady, sex responsibly.
I don't think you should be.
And I'm gonna close by saying this. I know a guy who is, in our age range. Well, me and Larry. Now I know you're probably below. You're probably a generation or two removed from us. Below. Okay, you might be too young. But anyway, Miss Neville. But anyway, but my point is, I know a guy in our age range who has all of a sudden decided that he wants children, but his callous reason for doing is kind of like a check off a list, or maybe it's, he
Yep.
feel like he'll fill a void.
Mhm.
That
Mm.
ain't cool, because you have to deal with this person's mother. You have to deal with this child. Like I have 3 kids, and I can tell you, like, this isn't some game that you play for a
This is
few
not a
months after
game.
Christmas, some video game you play and then you put it down when you're done with it. No, this is for life. And I ain't talking about just their formative development childish. I'm talking about even in their adult life. So my plea to the young men out here is, you know, you can't wait till marriage. That's fine. A lot of us did, but sex responsibly. Like, sex responsibly. And if you know that you are not at a stage to give a young lady or a young woman the type of monogamy that she desires, or the type of love, if you can't love her the way that she deserves to be loved, or desires to be loved, walk away. Sex responsibly. There's someone out there who will have sex with you, no strings attached. Sex responsibly, people, because it's too many kids of collateral damage. I'm be honest with you. I'm a kid. I'm a product of the collateral damage of a person who didn't sex responsibly.
For my closing thought, I will agree with both of you gentlemen. It's funny that I'm in the land of unicorns. I love it. Um, on the first point about teaching young people about sex so that it's not something that they are taught to fear, that that's the first most important thing. Teach them about it and let them have their questions so they don't feel like what they are doing has become this secret that they can't share with you, and they never learn how to sex responsibly. because of the dark cloud that's being put over sex as an experience. And with that as a foundation moving forward, understand that when you have sex with someone prematurely, before you learn how to communicate with that person, the likelihood that you will plant seeds for dysfunction is much, much higher. And when people put this cart before the horse, when they're getting into sex before they learn how to communicate, the only thing that usually happens is all unnecessary dysfunction and stress and experiences that only taint their experience moving forward. And these are the most painful because they're completely preventable if simple steps were taken at the beginning.
Yep. I can concur with that there. Um,
That concurrence.
so next week we dive into don't want nobody else kids, but I need to take care of mine. Brian, you still able to do that one next week?
Yeah, I'll be able to.
Okay, and we should have Miss Monique as a guest as well, so, a new guest. Um, it's and just kind of what we just said, sex responsibly kind of segues into next week. Because again, I was one of those people where I had a child, and I had a child after having my oldest, and I just left. I irresponsibly left her and had three more kids, even adopted a child. Um, and I had to go back and then realize that that was very selfish of me. Regardless of me knowing that she had a possible replacement dad at the house with her, she still didn't have me, that blood. There's nothing wrong with having that extra parent. That's something I tried to explain to my son's stepdad. I don't mind my child calling someone else dad if you treat them to a degree where they feel accepted of. I am not even accepted, but you do that fatherly or motherly duty to where they see you as such. By all means, yes, I because that right there gives me a sense of relief that my son is in the care of someone that's watching for the best interest. So definitely talking about that next week. Because there's a lot of people out here talking about ain't nobody else finna raise, especially men. Ain't no old man finna raise my kids, and you ain't raising them yourself.
Mm.
The reason why, at least a lot of them say that though, and I hate to keep prolonging this, but I guess because I'm late, I'm trying to get my hour in. Here's how I feel, right? If you were secure about if you were secure about how you were performing in a role of father, another man come in. I feel I've never felt threatened by anybody my oldest son's mother have dated. There was a relationship. A couple of us are friends and follow each other on Facebook. It didn't work out with her for either one of them. But you know, we're cool because at the end of the day, I knew I'm his dad. So it didn't matter. I actually, like you said, I welcome. It does give you a sense of relief to know that someone's there, but I know who I was in his life. He knows who I was. As long as you weren't trying to overstep that, then that's
that
fine.
part too.
I was handling my business. I was getting my child. I was paying my child support. I was going to get him on a regular. I was getting him, I was teaching him, instructing him, being a dad the way that God commanded him to be. So I wasn't worried about no other. As long as he wasn't mistreating my kid, he put his hands on my kid, as long as he wasn't violent, then we ain't had no problem. But I wasn't threatened by it. Guys who say that, in my opinion, a lot of them are the ones who aren't doing what they're supposed to or living up to what they're supposed to live up to.
Yep. So that part, definitely we're gonna be talking about that next week. Guys, feel free to stay just a couple of seconds later in the show. I'm gonna play the outro at the end of the outro, only because I have to have this lovely outro for YouTube. You can see all the other platforms that we are on. But with that being said, I do appreciate you watching now live, or for those that watch later. And by all means, please share, because I do not want to go to Facebook jail like I did last time. And I appreciate it. And guys, thank you so much for being a guest. And Brian, I will see you next Wednesday, 8 o'clock.
For sure.
Always
See
a
you guys later. Thank you, Miss
Always a
Evelyn.
pleasure.
yes, always.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Love you.